Hello everyone. In our previous videos, we have explored several major branches of philosophy, from metaphysics to epistemology and most recently, ethics. Today, we move on to another essential branch of philosophy, logic. At first glance, logic might seem abstract and technical, but it lies at the heart of every rational inquiry. Whenever we reason carefully, explain our beliefs, or test an argument, we are engaging with logic. So, what exactly is logic and why is it so central to philosophy and human thought? Let us begin by understanding what logic means, how it developed under different traditions, and why it continues to guide our reasoning today. Imagine someone says, all humans are mortal, Ram is human, therefore, Ram is mortal. This simple argument demonstrates what logic does. It examines whether a conclusion truly follows from its premises. At its core, logic is the study of correct reasoning. It helps us distinguish between arguments that merely sound convincing and those that are genuinely valid. It provides tools for evaluating consistency, coherence, and truth. Logic doesn't ask what we happen to believe, but whether our beliefs follow from evidence and reason. In this way, logic forms the foundation of clear thinking, not only in philosophy, but in every discipline that seeks truth. Across the world, thinkers have sought to understand how we know, how we infer, and how we reach sound conclusions. Two great traditions, Greek and Indian, developed distinct yet comparable systems of logical thought. In ancient Greece, Aristotle formalized the structure of reasoning through what we now call syllogistic logic, arguments built from premises that necessarily lead to a conclusion. For centuries, this formed the foundation of philosophical and scientific reasoning in the West. Later thinkers such as the Stoics and much later Leibniz and Frege expanded this framework into systems of propositional and symbolic logic, seeking greater precision in how thought could be represented. At the same time, in ancient India, philosophers were formulating equally profound logical systems. The Nyaya school, founded by Akshapada Gautama, described a comprehensive method of reasoning known as the Panchavayava, the five part syllogism. This framework shows how Indian philosophers integrated logic with observation and analogy. Later, Buddhist scholars such as Dinaga and Dharmakirti refined these ideas further, connecting reasoning with perception and valid cognition. Both the Greek and Indian traditions, though differing in expression, sought the same aim to understand the structure of sound thinking and the path that leads from perception to truth. Philosophers have long distinguished between two broad forms of reason, deductive and inductive. Both are indispensable and both illuminate different ways in which our minds move from one idea to another. Deductive reasoning is a way of thinking that starts with something general and moves towards something specific. You begin with statements that are already accepted as true, called premises, and from these, you reach a conclusion that must also be true if the reasoning is done correctly. For example, all mammals are warm blooded. Dolphins are mammals. Therefore, dolphins are warm blooded. In this case, because the general statements are true and the reasoning is logically correct, the conclusion cannot be false. That's what makes deduction powerful. It deals with necessity. If the logic is valid and the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. When philosophers talk about deductive arguments, they use two main terms, validity and soundness. An argument is valid if the conclusion logically follows from the premises, even if the premises themselves aren't true. An argument is sound if it is valid and the premises are actually true. So the argument, all birds can speak, sparrows are birds, therefore sparrows can speak, is valid because the structure works, but it's not sound because the first premise, all birds can speak, is false. As we know, birds can't speak. Deductive reasoning, then, is about certainty. The conclusion must be true if both the reasoning and the premises are correct. Inductive reasoning works in the opposite direction. Instead of starting with general truths, it begins with specific observations and then moves towards a general conclusion. It doesn't guarantee the conclusion. Instead, it suggests what is probably true based on the evidence. For example, the sun has risen every morning that we have observed. Therefore, the sun will rise tomorrow. This conclusion seems very likely, but it isn't absolutely certain. Something unexpected could happen. Inductive reasoning helps us form patterns, make predictions, and learn from experience. It's the kind of reasoning used in science where we observe, test, and form general ideas or laws based on repeated evidence. Philosophers describe inductive arguments as strong or weak depending on how well the evidence supports the conclusion. If the evidence makes the conclusion very likely, in other words, if it really points toward being true, we call the argument strong. And when that strong argument is also based on true observations, it's called cogent. In short, inductive reasoning helps us make sense of the world and expand our knowledge, even though our conclusions always remain open to revision if new evidence appears. Interestingly, Indian logic did not divide reasoning into two rigid categories of induction and deduction. Instead, it understood inference, known as anumana, or knowledge that follows, as a unified process that moves from experience to principle and back again. Reasoning, in this view, is a continuous movement beginning with perception, rising to general understanding, and applying that understanding to new cases. Rather than treating logic as a mechanical form of argument, Indian thinkers saw it as a living process of insight, a synthesis of observation, reflection, and conclusion. This approach captures something profound, that reasoning is not only about strict form, but also about the movement of the mind between what is seen and what is understood. Logic also provides a way to evaluate when reasoning goes wrong. An argument can fail for many reasons. The premises might be false, the structure can be flawed, or the evidence can be weak. These failures are called fallacies, and identifying them is one of the most practical uses of logic. In deductive reasoning, a fallacy might make an argument invalid even if its conclusion happens to be true. In inductive reasoning, a fallacy might make an argument weak or uncogent, relying on insufficient examples, false analogies, or emotional appeals instead of evidence. The Nyaya tradition classified such errors as hetva bhasa or false reasons, showing how early philosophers were alert to the dangers of faulty inference. To reason logically, therefore, is not merely to argue, it is to argue well with clarity, precision, and honesty. Logic is not confined to the halls of philosophy. Its influence permeates the structures of human inquiry across countless disciplines. It underlies science where a hypothesis are tested through systematic reasoning. It supports mathematics, which expresses logical relationships in their purest form. In computer science, it becomes the very foundation for programming and artificial intelligence. And in law, it guides judges and lawyers as they interpret evidence, connect facts, and seek justice. In all these fields, logic provides a structure for inquiry, a way to ensure that our ideas are based on clarity rather than confusion. In everyday life, too, logical reasoning helps us avoid confusion and bias. It invites us to ask questions like: does this conclusion really follow? Is my reasoning consistent? Have I mistaken emotion for evidence? By practicing these habits, logic becomes not merely an academic exercise, but a guide to more thoughtful and honest living, a discipline that refines not only our intellect but our integrity. In summary, logic is the language of reason. It examines how conclusions follow, it reveals errors in thought, and strengthens our ability to understand the world. Through logic, we learn not only how to argue, but how to think. It teaches us that sound reasoning is both a skill and a virtue, one that underlies all knowledge and every pursuit of truth. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thank you all for watching this video. I'll be coming up with another video in a short time. Till then, goodbye.